Today, let's go through the differences of a knit foot and how to use it on your sewing machine. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are looking at another presser foot in my kit, and that is the knit foot. So this is kind of like a lighter version of a walking foot if you're familiar with one of those, but it allows you to sew knit fabrics a little easier. And as you can see, the bottom portion looks very similar to how a regular presser foot would look, but it has this long bar at the top, and then the bottom actually has a little plastic piece as well, so you can see that it has this little arm that attaches it to the middle where the needle would go, and there's this little blue plastic element at the bottom, and this allows you to actually help move the fabric along. So if we compare it to a normal presser foot, you can see again the same size, sort of the same structure, but this knit foot has that little blue piece at the bottom, and this is actually plastic. So just so you know, you can take it off. You do not want to, though. The first time I ever used one of these, I did try to remove it. That's not what you want to do. So from the side, we get this very similar look as the pressure foot. It brings the fabric in, and then we have this large bar at the top. So just to start off to show you the differences, I am going to sew a piece of knit fabric using just a regular presser foot. And I am going to do a straight stitch at first, just so you can see what it looks like. And remember, whenever you're sewing knits, you should use a stretch stitch, but I am going to let you hear what it sounds like, as that knit foot does have a little bit of a different sound, and I feel like that can be a little bit alarming at first if you're not used to it. So the reason that I did this straight stitch was just to show, like it's easy to sew through, but there is no stretch in my fabric. So overall, this is not going to be the stitch you want to use. So now I'm going to use a stretch stitch using just the regular presser foot. So I'm going to do the lightning stitch, so number 3, and I'm just going to let it sew. And as you can see, it takes it a little bit longer because we are doing that stretch stitch. Now because of this, I do notice that it feels like my machine is kind of pulling the fabric a little bit more, and what this is going to do is going to make it kind of bulk up and be a little bit wavy in that pattern. So especially when you're using different types of knit fabric, this can really start to show up. You'll see I made a swimsuit over the summer, and I really had an issue with this because I was not using the knit foot at the time. So it's just something that if you really want to use knit fabrics and you want them to look nice, I highly recommend using the correct stitch, and you'd want to use the right presser foot. So all of that was just sewing using one piece of knit fabric. Most of the time you are actually going to be sewing 2 pieces of knit fabric together. So I'm going to be trying sewing 2 pieces of knit fabric together using a stretch stitch using a regular presser foot, just to see what's going to happen. And when I do this, what I noticed is that the machine is definitely kind of pulling the bottom fabric faster than it is pulling the top fabric, and this is going to give us kind of a wavy effect, which is not something that we want. So very similar to how I was talking about that bathing suit earlier that I had this issue on, that's what we're going to be getting from this. So as it's going through, it's trying to sew it, but because this fabric has stretch to it, it's just not able to get as clean and neat of a stitch. So here's what it looks like overall. Probably doesn't look too bad, but you can see that it does have some of that waviness that is occurring, and that can partly be because we were using that straight presser foot and the fabric was being pulled from the bottom and not fast enough from the top. So now I'm going to switch, and I'm going to try out my knit foot to see what the differences are between the two. So for my sewing machine, to attach it, I have a little black switch on the back that I just push, and then I am able to remove the old presser foot, and then I just kind of clip into place the knit foot, any foot that I am using. Always be sure that the screw on the side of your machine is tight as well if you ever feel like it's loose. So you can see that this bar hits the very top portion of my sewing machine, and I'm going to show you to you here just a little closer view. You can see that the needle is in the middle, so that is what we want. And always be sure when you're putting a new presser foot on that you make sure that your needle can go through the hole. So looking at mine, I think we're good since it's lined up in the center, and I am able to get the needle to go up and down. So now I'm going to try out the test using first just one piece of knit fabric, and I'm going to be taking that stretch stitch and just going all the way through. So very similar to how I did before, I am going to let you hear what this sounds like, as because it has that metal bar, it is sort of a louder sound. So with this going through, I can say that it definitely does feel like it is pulling the fabric in a correct amount. It's easy to sew. I'm not having any issues with it. And I think that, you know, for one piece of fabric, there's not too much of a difference between using a regular presser foot and a knit foot. But I will show you what the seam looks like so you can see it looks nice and smooth. You see that we still are able to stretch our fabric slightly because we did use that stretch stitch. So now I'm going to repeat all of this using 2 layers of knit material. And the first thing I noticed with this is because it does have that little plastic portion that's pulling the fabric from the top as well, it doesn't feel like the machine is pulling everything as hard as it was when I was using that regular stitch, because before it felt like I was really having to kind of push the fabric as well. So this does feel like the machine is helping me kind of pull the fabric along, and this is going to give us a much smoother looking stitch, which when you're sewing with knits is something that you want. So once I get to the end, I'm just going to lift this up and I will show you what the seam looks like compared to the other one. So you can see that there's much less waving that's going on. It looks really nice and neat. And so when we compare all of these together, you can see that this is my good stitch. So this was using the walking foot. This was not using the walking foot. You can see it's really wavy looking compared to the one where I used the walking foot. Overall, I highly recommend the knit foot, especially if you don't want to get something as bulky as a walking foot. It really helps when sewing knit materials. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.